What I found with drinking was I immediately became the type of man I thought I was supposed to be. I was loud, I didn't care, I was confident, I was funnier, I fit in. I felt like I was a part of something.
All right, man. Thanks for doing this. What is your name?
My name is Sam.
Okay, Sam. So, first question I have for you. Do you hear? Is that an
There's an
alarm?
alarm outside,
Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect
Just to let
timing.
everyone know we're going.
Oh my gosh. So, first question. What is addiction?
Oof. Uh, for me, addiction was hell. It was hell. It was a way of life, but it was hell. It was being completely reliant on substances, external elements to satisfy my immediate need and desire. It came before anything and everyone else. It it took away who I was. It made me someone I didn't recognize, and yeah, in short, addiction is hell.
All right, man. So, why don't you go ahead and get into your story?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for asking me to do this. It's really an honor. My sobriety date is April 6, 2021. That gives me 21 months of sobriety as we're sitting here today. I was born in England, just outside of London in Essex. Single mom, great family, amazing family, real close and supportive. I went to a private school. I had a lot of love. I never really, as a kid, was aware of the fact that, my circumstances were a little different from that of my cousins and my friends, being a child of a single mom. But I went to a great school, had a great family, had a good childhood. When I was 10, my mom got married to my stepdad, and we moved from London to California. As a 10-year-old, I was stoked. It was cool. I'm going to California. It's going to be surfing and celebrities. And pretty soon after arriving, a whole new life. There was a man in the house now. A few weeks after arriving in California, there's some violence was taking place in the house. There was some violent outbursts. There was a lot of things I wasn't used to. Growing up in the house with a single mom, things were pretty quiet and calm. So my first real exposure to a man was loud. It was violent. It was um, it's my way or the highway. Uh, get what I want by any means necessary. It was a huge change. Also, coming from where I came from to where we moved to, the kids were different. Where I came from, it was a private school. I was a sensitive. I was a polite and sweet kid, and all of a sudden, that was a weakness. Where we were living, there were gangs. There were, I mean, it was a regular school, but it was different from where I came from. So immediately, I didn't fit in. Obviously, I was a new kid. I was from another country, and I just felt out of place. But I just navigated it like any kid would. Just played sports and hung out with my friends, and just started to happen was I started to spend more and more time outside the house, and the home life was more and more turbulent. I was about 13 or 14. We started drink. I must have drank at home. Pretty quickly, it turned into drinking at school and us taking turns stealing our parents' alcohol and going to school and drinking. Um, the biggest thing in hindsight now was I spent a lot of time as an only child of a single mom. I spent a lot of time in my head. When I started drinking, all of a sudden, while I was drunk, I was completely in the room with everyone. I was outside of my head for the first time, and I loved it. I knew immediately I loved it. Pretty soon, every chance I got, I was drinking. The consequences started happening pretty quick, but I had no idea that it was a result of my behavior. I just thought these things were happening. Failed relationships, getting into trouble, losing jobs, things like that. Not once did I ever consider that my actions were a factor in any of these incidents. But I went through life just drinking, not caring. The more I drank, the more I wanted to stay drunk, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I used to just want to spend all my time in that state because as soon as the alcohol would wear off, I was back in my head, and it was worse than it was before. I like to party. I like to drink while I drove. I like to drink at home. I like to drink alone. I like to drink with people. It didn't matter. I just like to have a drink all the time. It was my identity. Drinking was who I was. I always had a drink. It got to a point where I wasn't able to go to bed without something. So it went from a couple times a week to every single day. And for a few years it was every single day. But I was able to achieve some things while living that way. And I think I was blinded by the fact that from an outside perspective, it looked like I had everything together. I had a girl, we were doing great. I had a good job, car, everything was looking good. But without me even realizing it, things were just escalating. I went from just drinking beer or drinking liquor out in the open to her making some comments about the way I was drinking, and rather than stop, I would then just drink a beer openly, but then have a bottle in the closet and then and go drink that. I was the type of guy where we're sitting down to watch TV at the end of the night, and I didn't have any booze. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep without it, so I'd be like, "Babe, you want some ice cream? We're out, but I'll go get some." And she's like, "No, it's 10 o'clock at night. Why? Don't worry, I'll be back." So of course I go to the store, I get the ice cream, I also get a bottle, and I come back in a way better mood. And it just went on like that for years. When the quarantine happened, I no longer had to wait until 4 or 5 or 6 p.m. to drink. So if I'm waking up in the morning and I'm feeling rough from the night before, I would just crack a beer. And it started to be earlier and earlier in the day. At one point, she just had enough and left. And it just sent me into a spiral. Spent about 10 days blacked out. And some friends had noticed that I was in bad shape. I had spent a few days in my room with bottles, essentially hoping I could drink and not wake up because I was unable to face the reality that I had woken up in. I still didn't think anything was my fault. I thought I was a victim. I thought it was her fault for leaving. Um, yeah, it was a dark place. So some friends noticed I was in bad shape. They took me in. I was able to get sober. I went through an outpatient program through my healthcare provider, and I would tell everyone that would listen how good I felt, how good I was sleeping, how I'd never needed to drink again. I thought I'd beat it. Within a few weeks, I was more miserable than I ever was drinking. And that's what scared me. I thought that if I stopped drinking, all my problems would go away and that all I needed to do was stop drinking. But when I stopped drinking and I felt worse than before, it really scared me. I thought I was suffering from some kind of depression. I made an appointment with a psychiatrist. I started seeing a therapist. I was lying to the therapist. Uh, so a few weeks, I think it was about 8 weeks into not drinking, I just found myself just the way I would describe it at the time is I felt like I was in the passenger seat of my own mind. Like my mind did not work like this. I didn't understand who this person was that I was becoming. I was irritable, moody, angry, short-tempered. So one day we're at a friend's house, and I just felt I was back in my head. I was no longer in the room and part of life. I was back in my head and wondering what I would say in this situation. I went inside to use the restroom, saw a bottle on the counter, and just chugged it. I went back out, and I was back in the room, and I was feeling like myself again. And it was off and running from there. Went back to hiding my drinking, lying about my drinking. Um, I was able to get away with that for another few months until I got to this point where I knew I couldn't keep on drinking the way I was. So before I would feel miserable and I would drink and I would feel better. But I got to the point where I was miserable. I would drink and I was just drunk and miserable, and then I would wake up and be hungover and miserable, and then go back to being drunk and miserable. And there was no escape anymore. Alcohol was no longer an escape. It scared me because the one thing I had relied on my whole life to get me through was no longer working for me. I was terrified at first because alcohol, like I said, was my identity. All my friends drank. That's what we did. I was I'd buy beer on the way home from the gym. I just didn't know what life would look like without it. I was scared because I didn't want to admit I was an alcoholic because that meant I could never drink again. I was still trying to hold on to the idea that I could just control my drinking. So, in a session with my therapist, he I finally came clean about the fact that I had been drinking and lying about it. He recommended I go to a detox and said he would find me a bed in a detox the following day, but told me to attend a 12-step meeting that night. So I did, and for that hour I was in that meeting, I didn't feel like dying. I didn't feel like killing myself. I didn't feel this impending doom that I had felt for months before. Um, I left that meeting and I went directly to another one, and that was April 6th, 2021. In those meetings, they were nothing like me. Some of these people were homeless. No one looked like me in these meetings, but the way they were describing the way they felt was exactly like I felt, and I had never heard that before. All the advice I was getting was, "Go hike. You need to just get outside. You need to do the work," but I didn't know what the work was. Working on myself and focusing on myself was just making things worse. But all of a sudden, I was confronted with these people who came from completely different backgrounds, who knew exactly how I felt and exactly the thought patterns I was experiencing. Um, and ever since then, I just did as I was told. It was a completely new way of thinking. First of all, I learned from these people that were just like me that the hopelessness, the fear, the despair that I was feeling was not the result of some chemical imbalance or anything like that. It was alcoholism, and that even if I removed the alcohol, I was doomed. But they had a solution. So in that moment, on that day, for whatever reason, I was humbled enough to just get myself out of the way and follow what these people were suggesting. They were able to not only be sober but appear to be happy without alcohol. But through meeting these people and doing what they told me to do, I was able to see that I can never drink in a responsible way. I can never drink again. Once I had accepted that fact, it was a lot easier. I didn't know what my life would look like without alcohol, but I knew I didn't want it to look like it did with alcohol. I I was basically beaten into a state of defeat. So I surrendered. I just gave up all ideas I had of controlling my drinking, and I started doing what I was told. I'll share a couple of things that I did on my ongoing journey in sobriety that got me to where I am today. One of the things I was able to do was look at my life objectively. Not this narrative I had about what was done to me, about if you had my life, you drink too, or if I just drink to deal with my head. Like all that was completely smashed because I was able to look at everyone in my life I had an issue with, and every event in my life I didn't think worked out the way it should have, and I was able to see how I participated in that outcome. I was not a victim. I was an active participant and usually the catalyst to a lot of the things that happened in my life that were negative. I had this whole narrative built in my head about how all these things happened to me rather than uh, all these things happened because of my behavior. So after I was able to look at everything objectively, one of the big things I learned through that process of writing out all these resentments that I had was that not only was I an active participant in all of them, everyone that I was mad at, and I had this story in my head about how they did something to me, they were just doing their best. It really opened my eyes to nobody's sitting in a room thinking about how to make my life difficult. That's an easy narrative to keep with you because it protects you from the reality that you are at fault in a lot of things. But once I was able to remove my ego, or my ego was removed for me, it made things a lot more clear. It alleviated a lot of this anger and hatred and regret and guilt and shame. Um, One of the things I did on my journey to recovery is make amends with people whom I had caused harm, and one of those people was my stepdad. Um, I had gone through life with this idea that I hated him, that I would never, ever, ever forgive him for what he had done to myself, my mom, my stepbrother and stepsister. But one day, I don't know what it was. I don't know. It wasn't a decision I made, but something came over me, and I just knew I had to go make amends to him. And making amends to someone who you think owes you an apology is not easy. But on the way over there, I prayed for courage. I prayed for humility. I did all the things I was told to do. And I get there. He's in the garage drinking, probably. I don't remember. And I just said, "Hey, I'm in recovery. I'm working a program to get and stay sober, and part of that is making amends for anyone who I've caused harm to. And one of those people is you. I know that through my behavior, I've caused problems in your relationship with my mom. I've said things about you to you and behind your back that have caused you harm, and I haven't been a great stepson." And I don't know that he fully understood what I was doing. To be fair, I probably caught him by surprise. But his response was, "Oh, you didn't do anything. It's your mom's fault." And in that moment, me acting on my own accord, I probably would have said or done something to him. But I had prayed for courage and humility, and I was given courage and humility. So I just remembered the purpose of my visit, that I was there to make amends for the harms I had caused, not to bring up harms he had done. That's none of my business. So I just accepted what he had to say. I gave him a hug and I went inside and told my mom I loved her and had a talk with her. And on the way home that night, for the first time in my life, I knew I was not becoming someone different in the sense that's not me. I was becoming who I was meant to be. Prior to that moment, I had felt God's love. I had been given a few months of sobriety at that point. But in that moment, there was this feeling, it's very hard to articulate, but I just felt worthy of God's love because I was removing myself and my ego and just doing what I was doing, the spiritual thing rather than satisfying my immediate needs. A lot of my drinking, a lot of my life before I got sober was just about feeling good in the moment, satisfying the desires of my body, my brain. But for once, I had done something that was beyond myself. I had removed myself and my feelings from a situation and just done the right thing. Um, in that moment, all the resentment and anger and fear around that relationship was removed. And if I'm honest, it's not like it's been gone forever. The ego rebuilds quickly, but I've experienced that and I'm able to tap into it by taking certain actions. Another pivotal moment in my sobriety was when I got sober. I wanted my girl back. I just wanted the relationship back. There was no chance of that happening. I had hurt her in so many ways. I mean, she did the right thing. She left. And I'd caused a lot of harm. I watched her heartbreak essentially. So early on I was just stressing out about that. I called a guy from a 12-step program and I was just venting about how I'm brokenhearted and if she just gives me another chance. And he said, "Well, it sounds like you love this girl a lot. So why don't you think about everything you want to give her, everything you want to do with her, and everything you want her to have and experience, and pray for her to get those things, even if you're not the one to give it to her." And it gave me chills because that was the last thing in the world I wanted was to pray for someone else to give her what I wanted her to have. So, but I knew that was the right thing to do. That night, I got down to my knees and I prayed for her to have. I thought about everything I wanted to give her and for her to experience, and everything I wanted her to have, and I prayed that she gets it even if I'm not the one to give it to her. And again, that feeling, that physical feeling came over me that is hard to describe. But I had once again, in that moment, removed myself. And that's a theme in my recovery. Recovery, it's an ongoing thing, and a spiritual journey is never ending. Um, it doesn't matter what scenario I encounter today, the answer is usually simple. It's usually removing myself and my own ego and wants and needs from a situation and doing the right thing, making a decision with the spirit rather than the flesh. Every single time I do that and I follow through with that, the results are better than anything I could have wished for or prayed for.
If there's a version of yourself out there from, let's say, 2 years ago, if you were to chirp in his ear a little bit and give him any advice, what would it be?
Uh, this is tough because I do this on a regular basis now. A large part of my life revolves around working with people who are struggling. The challenging thing is you can want something for someone, but they have to want it. I always tell guys I work with, like, I'm willing to put as much time into this as you are, but you have to take that step. There's an element to it that's, I think it's greater than anything intellectual. Um, However, let's say there's someone like me from 2 years ago who is in a place where they're beaten down and their life does not look like they want it to look, and they feel despair and hopeless, and they don't know what to do. The best thing I could do is do what Kenny told me to do, and say go to a 12-step meeting, man. There's so much that doesn't make sense at first. There's so much that seems foreign and weird, and you want to overthink it and try to outsmart it. The key is just to surrender and say, look, my way's not working. So let me try what you guys have. The only one that can stop you from getting sober is you. You can get in your own way. No one, no one, not one person in my life tried to jeopardize my sobriety. Everyone was happy for me. When I chose to drink again, it was my decision. Everyone wanted the best for me, and I needed to get over myself and my own ego and my own fears to accept a different way of life and a different way of thinking. Um, if someone is out there and they're struggling, and it's me from 2 years ago, I would say that there is a solution. It's out there. Like, there's people way more far gone than you are that have found peace and happiness and are living beautiful, amazing lives and are experiencing things they could have never even thought to pray for in the past. There's people who have committed horrible acts and lived horrendous lives that are now amazing, beautiful, spiritual people who you would see, and you see them and they're glowing. That can be attained. There's nobody that's too far gone, but there's a lot of people that are just in their own way. Yeah, I think we are our own biggest barrier to recovery. Um, Early on, I would think I'll do this stuff that you say, but not this stuff because that sounds dumb. Or, oh, I think I can outsmart this. I was always trying to cheat the system. Being honest with yourself and others, it's probably easier to be honest with other people before it's possible to be honest with yourself. So just be honest about everything, about how much you're using, how you feel when you're not using. If you could just start by being honest about what you're feeling, you're that's a step in the right direction. The help is out there. There's millions and millions of people who have figured this out, who have been given an amazing life by just doing what has been proven to work for decades.
Do you ever have this voice that comes up for you that says, yeah, I can probably, pot, right? Like pot's not alcohol. Or
Absolutely.
this other substance isn't my drug of choice, so I could try that one. And so you say absolutely. When that thought comes up, how do you work with that thought?
So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's been times in my recovery where I was able to get some clean time, and I got my girl back, and I was feeling pretty good. And of course, I thought, I don't need this. This is for these guys. I don't need to do what they do. And pretty quick, I started to feel pretty uncomfortable, and I had to learn that the hard way. Luckily, I didn't pick up anything, but the way I look at that, I don't think there's anything wrong with weed. I don't think there's anything wrong with alcohol. But I know that for me to live the life that I was meant to live and to be happy and peaceful, anything that I can get from weed or alcohol, I can attain through work. So the way I look at it now is anything that's easy, like grabbing a piece of cake or a cigarette, it's very easy to attain. But the relief it gives you is relative to how difficult it is to attain, right? So to pick up a drink or smoke weed or vape weed or eat weed at this point, it's very easy. I don't have to do any I have to do very little work to get it. And I would probably feel temporary relief, but then it would be gone and I would still be left wondering why I feel this way again, and I'd probably go for more and more and more to stay in that state of relief. The beauty of sobriety is when I'm uncomfortable, I don't have an escape. I don't have a substance to remove me from that discomfort. So I'm able to figure out why I'm uncomfortable and take actions that are not always easy to overcome that discomfort. 9 times out of 10, it's calling someone who's also in the program who can provide me with a simple answer. It's usually getting out of myself. When I start to feel uncomfortable, it's because I'm spending too much time back in my head. Just like I use alcohol to get out of it in the past, now I can go help someone else who needs help, and that gives me relief. There's a paradoxical nature to all this that I've been thinking about, where if I want to feel good on the inside, the solution is on the outside. So if I'm feeling uncomfortable, the solution after, I might pray on it, I might meditate on it, I might apologize to someone if that's warranted. But the solution is then going to help someone else and doing something outside of my body. If I'm unhappy with the way my life looks, which I was when I first got sober, I have to do work internally. So what I found is if there's a problem, by me focusing on that problem and trying to use my will to guide that issue to the way I want it to look, that never works. The opposite is usually true, where I do what I can and then I turn my attention to someone else. And then I'm helping them out in some way, whether it's just hearing them out, hearing what they have, giving them giving them a solution to their problem or a suggestion to their problem. It's usually service, being of service to someone in some way. That doesn't have to be in the program. It could be of service to a family member, a friend, a boss, a colleague. So to answer your question about, do I sometimes think that I can pick up a drink or smoke at this point? I don't want to. The desire has been removed from me. And that's crazy to even hear myself say at this point, because that's all I wanted in the past. I used to just do whatever it took to feel good in the moment, but that feeling was fleeting. And now I'm able to attain real peace and real serenity by doing difficult things, um, and taking action. And because those things are difficult to do, the relief I get from them is that much more impactful. It's that much bigger. So if I was to grab a drink, I might feel good for an hour or a few hours, and then I'm in a worse spot than I was before. But if I go work with a guy who's struggling, I go home and I'm on top of the world. I'm nicer, I'm calmer, more patient, more tolerant, I'm more present. So I have other tools to navigate discomfort now. So no, I don't have the desire. And if the thought ever arises, I know that there's something I'm not being honest with myself about.
What is sobriety?
Sobriety is peace. Sobriety is freedom. It's being a part of life. It's everything, man. I'm without sobriety. So if you would have asked me before I got sober, pray for whatever you want and you can have it, I wouldn't have even thought to pray for the things I've been able to experience in sobriety. Sobriety has enabled me to be a better now fiance to that same girl, son, brother, friend, everything. It's given me confidence, it's given me peace, it's given me serenity. It's given me a life. It's given me a life without guilt and shame and regret. It's given me a life I can be proud of. It's given me a life I look forward to living. It's given me hope. And yeah, sobriety is I don't know where I would be without it, but I hope I never have to find out.
Do you feel like there's anything else you want to say?
Alcoholics, I could talk forever, but I think I'm good. I listened for once. I surrendered. Yeah, and yeah, man. Now I'm getting married soon, and life is better than ever.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
it's wild. So thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kenny Hill with Recovery Hill. My intention here is to show the diversity of sobriety. How one finds themselves clawing from bottom is as nuanced as their journey to bottom. And their situation and recovery has the potential to be highly relatable to somebody who is watching. Therefore, I offer the interviewees to have total freedom to express whatever has worked for them, whatever has helped them sustain sobriety. That said, here at the end of the interview, I want to make a quick request so that it wasn't to take away from the interview itself. This request is that you like and share the video. You can subscribe if you want, that's up to you, but at least like and share it so that the content can get to as many people as possible. There is a great capacity and potential for the story you just watched to be able to help out somebody else to begin their story of recovery.